بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وآله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذريته أجمعين. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم أرنا حقائق الأشياء كما هي ربنا، زدنا علما وعملا وإخلاصا يا رب العالمين. اللهم انصر أولياءك في مشارق الأرض ومغاربها وانصرهم على عدوك وعدوهم إنك على كل شيء قدير. اللهم فرج عنا وعن إخواننا في مشارق الأرض ومغاربها. اللهم نفس كربنا وكربهم وثبت أقدامنا وأقدامهم والطف بنا وبهم يا أرحم الراحمين يا رب العالمين. وصل وسلم على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا مولانا محمد وبارك وسلم عليه. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. الله Akbar. Bismillah. Okay, we are continuing our reading of Professor Hahn's article, Why Revolution is No Longer Possible. And last time we had looked at his distinction between installing a system and maintaining it. So the power in maintaining system is in disciplinary and industrial society relied on repression. Factory workers were brutally exploited by factory owners. I think last time we did mainly anyone wishing to. So that we had covered last time. Anyone wishing to install a new system of rule needs to overcome opposition from the system which is already there. So this likewise applies to the neoliberal system of the rule. Neoliberal system of rule. Obviously, neoliberal system is not a revolution in a proper sense of the word, because neoliberal revolution can be described as a revolution within a system, not a revolution from one system to another system, because the system is still capitalism. So there's a distinction between installing a new system and establishing power an establishing power is needed in order to set up a new system of rule, and this often entails violence, like the event. That establishing power is not, however, identical with the power that stabilizes the system on the inside. So that then there's this distinction between installing a new system and replacing it, which replaces the old system. That old system can be either, so this new system can either be a system within an old system, so that would be a revolution within a system, like neoliberal revolution, if you want to call it a revolution. That's a revolution within a system which is still there, which is capitalism. But when capitalism replaced feudal system before it, that was a revolution where a new system replaced an old system. For example, Russian Revolution of 1917 replaced the old system, the old Tsarist feudal system. I mean, it wasn't entirely a feudal system, but it was a feudal system come early industrial stages of a new capitalist version of the old feudal system. So anyway, there was a systematic change in both cases at some level. So the event which replaces event of revolution is important. And obviously there's a whole process, and if it is a real revolution as formation of a state within a state, and a society within society, and that process leads to an event if the process is successful. And deeper the process, the event would be, I think, more seamless. But generally, the event is violent because the old system tried to put a last ditch fight, That depends on the strength and the assessment and the inner courage of a system as well. So, for example, Iranian system, there wasn't a much fight at the end from the old system, although there was a subsequent civil war of a sort. But that was the elements within a revolutionary system, because there was an Islamic element and there was traditional Islamic element and there was a more modernist Islamic element, and then there was a socialist element and there were nationalist elements. So once ulama established their hegemony, then the other factions, they sort of tried to. So there was a whole bombing campaign, and obviously America and other imperialist powers supported those terrorist activities, during the first few years of Islamic Revolution. But the event is violent, but the violence is not always at the same level. Um, so that's the second thing, one and two. And the third phase is, once a system is established, a new system, then it runs and stabilizes itself according to its own rules. And the dynamic of running a system is totally different from dynamic of replacing the old system. That's what he's saying, or he should have been saying. So this is the dynamic of a replacement of a system. That's totally different from not running a new system, for which you need a internalized system rules, etc. That doesn't involve the same level of repression and violence which you had at these levels when you were trying to replace the old system, for example. So that's what he is saying. Anyone wishing to install a new system rule needs to overcome opposition. The likewise applies to the neoliberal system. The neoliberal system of rule, and establishing power is needed in order to establishing power is needed in order to set up a new system of rule. And this often entails violence. Okay, you're establishing a new system. That establishing power, however, is not identical with the power that stabilizes the system from inside. That's the internal power. You need a positive power to run a system, stabilize a system. And one of the thing, for example, so you have a revolution, and people talk about permanent revolution, but one thing which happens is, once a revolution is successful, every revolution ensures that there's no further revolution. So, in a sense, revolutionaries overnight become anti-revolutionaries in that sense. Anti-revolutionaries vis-a-vis any counter-revolution. That's very natural. And it applies to all revolution, Islamic, non-Islamic, liberal, non-liberal, etc. For example, neoliberalism was a revolution. Liberalism itself was a revolution. You can read that in Locke's writings and Kant's writings, for example. But in Locke, you can also read that once liberal revolution is successful, then you establish a constitution, for example. And constitutionalism, one of the purpose of constitution is, constitution also provide guidelines for the running of the new system, but one of the major purpose of constitution is to make any future revolution against this system impossible. And I think Iranians learn from that. That's why they put a revolution, put a constitution there, their Islamic constitution, which ensures that there won't be any further revolution as much as possible. And you have violence in establishing a new system because the old system or existing system puts fight against those who are trying to establish a new system. But once a new system is established, what you need now is to defend this system, obviously, but also to run this system. So obviously, the tool through which you will run this system, internal rule for internal stabilization and smooth running of this system, can't be the same which were used in order to overthrow the old system. That's obvious here. That's what basically is talking about. So anyone wishing to install a new system of rule needs to overcome opposition. This likewise applies to the neoliberal system of rule. And establishing power is needed in order to set up a new system of rule, and this often entails violence. That establishing power is not, however, that establishing power is not, however, identical with the power that stabilizes the system on the inside. So this power is the positive power which runs the system. The former power was a negative power, which was basically aimed at overthrowing the existing system. Okay, so then he gives the example. It's a well-known fact that Margaret Thatcher, as the trailblazers of the neoliberal system, treated the trade union as the enemy within and used violence to fight them. Obviously, that was a revolution within a system, not a genuine revolution. However, violent intervention to assert the neoliberal agenda must not be confused with the power that maintains the system, of course, because in order to maintain the system, you need a population which internalizes that. Internalizes the system. You need to form an individuality, form and reform an individuality and a social order and a political order, an economic order on a continuous basis. So this power is a positive power, and this can't be mainly a repressive power, because you can't run any system, however fascist that system is, how dictatorial or authoritative that system is, based purely on repressive power. You need a positive power to run a system. And if a system is basically running on a repressive system, then that system is not going to survive. Okay. Okay. So that much basically we had already done. We just have gone through it, and hopefully we have got a bit more depth, deeper understanding of this distinction. However, violent intervention to assert the neoliberal agenda must not be confused with the power that maintains the system. That's a positive power. Okay, the power maintaining the system in disciplinary and industrial society relied on repression. Now, here he is saying that in the industrial system, but that can only be true of the earlier industrial system, because when the system started, there was a need for repression, not a pure repression, but a use of a legitimate repression for maintaining a system. And here, what we need to understand is the relationship between discipline and self-discipline. So, even within the positive stabilizing power, the power which is basically running a system, you need, it can't be purely repressive or coercive, but any system, however popular that system is, even your home, need repressive and coercive, coercive power. But most people in the society consider that as legitimate coercive power. And that coercive power is the power of social power as well as state level power, like legal and rule based power, which entail, punishment and fines and all those things, etc. And social power, which is coercive, but it doesn't include violence, legitimate violence. It includes, people looking down upon you, or displeasure, or different sorts of social rejection of a behavior through custom and mores and all those things. So you do need in any system coercive power. Coercive power, both social level as well as legal, rule based, which can lead to punishment of various sorts. This is more like there's no actual violence and punishment is involved, but there's sort of a displeasure, looking down on you and becoming pariah, depending on your level of violation. This coercive power is present in any society. But generally, this coercive power, people, if a system is strong and popular, this coercive power is considered as legitimate. So even though nobody like coercion, but people don't, people tolerate, and people don't feel it coercive as such to a certain extent, because they think that it is legitimate. So people still might feel, caution, caution following traffic rules, but they consider it legitimate because they think that, for their benefits, for example. So any system needs caution, but this caution was social as well as state level caution, but this caution is is legitimate and it's not experienced as such by most people in a society if a system is well entrenched and popular. So, on the other hand, at the start of the system, any system, you actually need repression of a different sort in order to coerce people into certain behaviors. So you use different types of violence, which might be legitimate or illegitimate, but at the start, the system uses it more frequently. So at the start of the industrial system, the factories and the condition was really bad. If you read Dickens novels, for example, um, so that repression and that sort of violence, which was experienced by people in factories, in schools, in severe training in army barracks and surveillance by police, etc. Because they were trying to inculcate new behaviors into a population, trying to form a new individuality and new social standards, etc. But this level of repression and violence decreases as in proportion to how people start internalizing those rules and those behaviors. So you start with discipline, but you can decrease that discipline, or the need to that discipline quotient is decreased to the degree that people internalize those discipline at this individual as well as social level. So discipline is only successful if it leads to self-discipline to a certain extent. So at the start of the industrial era, there was repression and all that, but that could be, that repression was slowly decreased to the extent that people internalized those repressions and those disciplines, etc. And people no longer thought that somebody else was disciplining them, because now through education, through training, through whatever, people started monitoring themselves, disciplining themselves. So you didn't need any monitors, external monitors. Anyway, so let's stop here and we'll pick up from here again, inshallah, next time. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Wa salli wa sallim ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa azwajihi wa dhurriyyatihi ajma'in bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin.